I want to welcome everybody today that is tuning in to watch this. I have a great guest speaker today, Karen Koenig with KK Financial Solutions. And today I want to discuss ideas with Karen as to what she is seeing in the market with seniors, what's going on. So hopefully we can all gain a little bit of knowledge when we are ready to retire, or maybe some of you are already retired. So I'm going to ask Karen a kind of a series of questions, and we'll just have some conversation about it. And if you guys, need other information, make sure you reach out to Karen. Go ahead, Karen, and tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
Well, I am the owner and founder of KK Financial Solutions, which is a boutique financial services company. And I not only do financial planning, but I also do assets under management. And I primarily serve business owners, divorced women, because I got divorced in 2008 and walked away from my divorce with a large sum of money. And I put it in the market right before the housing market crash, and wished I would have had an advisor advising me at the time, because I really didn't make that money back for probably about 10 years after that. And so I have kind of an affinity for divorced women. And so that's kind of why I have those kind of a niche market there. But really, I service my clientele ranges anywhere from 22 to 90. So
Mm-hmm.
but the core of the people that I serve range from about 45 to 65. So,
Okay, great. Yeah, those nearing retirement or
mhm.
been in their career for a while. So you see a lot of what's happening with people not preparing, waiting too long, and they still want to retire and how they navigate through that. So that's why, I myself as a reverse mortgage person really work well with financial planners, because many times if they do own a home, the two blended together can be a great answer depending on what their situation is. So with that said, what do you see the biggest mistake is with retirees, and why?
Well,
What do
it's
you think
that's kind
happening?
of a
Loaded question.
multi-part answer. So,
Hmm.
uh, there's a few mistakes that they make, and one of it is treating retirement as or treating retirement as kind of a lump sum instead of a paycheck. So a lot of them say to me, how much do I have, or do I have enough to retire? Where the question that they should be asking me is, how do I turn the money that I have into a steady tax efficient income once I retire? So that's really the question that they should be asking, or what they should have in their head, instead of, is $1 million enough to retire? Is $2 million enough to retire? Is $500,000 enough to retire? That's not really the question that they should be asking. Um, Another part is really ignoring the sequence of returns,
Hmm.
and or sequence of risk of returns. And really what that is if there's a market downturn in the first few years of the retirement, that really can damage your portfolio in the long run, because even if the long-term returns are fine, it's going to damage the portfolio. So
Right.
you may want to delay your retirement if we have a negative, or a, like some of my retirees who wanted to retire in year 2020, when we had the market crash. You may want to delay when the market goes up again, because it could permanently damage your portfolio, because your market takes a hit, or your portfolio takes a hit. And then another one is, really, a lot of people don't think about it, but is understanding your healthcare. What are you going to do for healthcare if you retire before you're 65 and
Hmm.
you aren't Medicare age, and
Hmm.
or long-term care? People don't think about long-term care, and or they delay think purchasing long-term care, or turning like term policies into long-term care. A lot of people have had kind of negative, kind of like reverse mortgages. They have this negative connotation with long-term care, because long-term care policies used to be, you bought it, and if you didn't use it, that money was gone. Well, long-term care policies aren't like that anymore. A lot of them have return of policy if you don't ever use it, so you get your money back. So
That's good.
a lot of people don't understand that. And then some people don't understand, they get the tax order wrong. So the order of how you should take things according to how you get taxed.
Hmm.
So, like when you take your RMDs, should you take them at 73? Should you start taking stuff out of your IRAs before that? When the timing of your Social Security, when should you take a Roth? Should you do Roth conversions? Those types of things. And then some people start getting too conservative in their portfolios too soon. So they get risk averse too soon, or like 2 or 3 years before they retire, where really they should stay the course. Like if they're growth focused or moderate growth, they should just stay that up until retirement, because you don't really want to get into the income producing until you really want to start producing income. You want to get as much returns as
Yeah.
you want. So that's kind of a five-part answer
Uh-huh.
to the biggest mistakes, but those are the biggest mistakes that I see.
Those are some good mistakes. I have a real quick question for you on the long-term care. So if somebody doesn't end up using it, let's say they just want to cancel the policy though, can they get the funds back if they're just going to cancel the policy?
Yeah,
Okay, that's really good to know because I know for some people, those policies are just astronomically high, $800 a month, right? $1,000 a month, and a lot of seniors don't have those funds to pay for it. So I have had clients get a reverse mortgage to actually pay for the long-term care. And then some people just don't get the long-term care and they get the reverse and let the line of credit build up and use that, right? There's multiple ways to attack it, but that's really good to know that long-term care. And it may be good to even have you come back and do a series on just long-term care, right? And then um, on the health, like, taking out that people don't understand, what are they going to do for their health? I've had that.
right.
So yeah, those are some great things to go over. And I'm probably one of those who almost gets a little too conservative. I used to be that heavier risk taker. But
Right,
I will say
right.
since my funds have been with you, they've actually made money. And for years they sat with a few other planners and they didn't make any money. So at least it's doing something these
Hmm.
days. Right. Um, so what do you think most people on preparing for retirement, but they actually aren't? Where they think that they are, right? They're like, I'm preparing, or maybe I am prepared, but they aren't. What do you
Well,
see?
I'm going to go back to that number one thing that I talked about was, well, it wasn't the number one, but it was one of the things I talked about was healthcare. A lot of
Hmm.
people don't think about the healthcare. So it's not just the cost of it, but it's the complexity of it. So
Hmm.
people don't talk, they don't understand Medicare, the timing of it, and the penalties. So
Right,
you may not want to retire until you're 70, but you still have to file for Medicare at 65, because if you don't,
yes,
you'll get a 50% penalty for not doing it. So you
right.
file for Medicare and you can let it sit. And let's say you still work till 70 and you get medical through that work that you're working,
Hmm.
you can still get the medical through that work. And then Medicare is your supplemental. And then once you retire, medical is your primary. And then you can do a supplemental like a Humana or something like that. And then basically the rising premiums. People don't prepare for the rising premiums of those supplementals. And then again, long-term care, they think they're prepared, or they don't think long-term care is something is for them, or that that's never going to happen for them. And
Right.
then a lot of people don't prepare for taxes. A lot of people think that their taxes go down when they retire. And what I see is taxes don't go down in retirement. That's that old adage that people
Hmm.
think that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire. But with people who have pensions, like the baby boomers, these people who have high pensions, then they have high Social Security, and then maybe they have a military retirement on top of that, you get all that bumping you into a
Yeah,
high tax bracket,
right.
then you're still in a tax bracket like you were when you were working. So people don't
And
even think,
sometimes higher,
and
even, right?
sometimes
Sometimes
it can
higher.
be higher. So they don't
Yeah,
even prepare for the taxes. And
right.
then and the other thing is they don't prepare for how long retirement could actually last. So some of these people, I want to retire when I'm 55. Well, what if you live until you're 95? That's 40
Exactly.
years that would be 40 years that you're in retirement. So where is that money going to come from for the next 40 years?
Yeah.
So again, you have to think about that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then,
And I find a lot of people just don't want to, they bury their head in the sand and want to go spend all their
right,
money now. And it's like, stop, wait. I've computed out for some clients, like, I really don't want to see you doing that loan. They're like, why? And I show them the amortization schedule. I'm like, you're 72 and your mother's 99. Where are you going to get your funds from? Right. Yeah. They really don't. I think that's one of the biggest challenges I have too, is making people look at the long-term duration, not a get quick fix plan, right? Not a
right,
band-aid for your cash flow. You've got to think long-term.
right.
So how do you usually help retirees create income when they don't want to sell investments during that, like, the market, the down market? Where do you find them usually getting those funds from?
Well, so that's where we could start talking about like reverse mortgages. So if somebody
Mm-hmm.
does a reverse mortgage, you would usually dip into a reverse or dip into the funds on a reverse when you have a down market, because you wouldn't want to dip, like I said before, you don't want to dip into your investments during a down market because you can damage your portfolio over the long term if you take money out of your portfolio during a down market. So why would you do that? So if
Right.
you've got this reverse mortgage over here and you've got this pool of money that you can take money from, why wouldn't you just take the money out of that reverse mortgage and use that as part of your income?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
you've
I know.
got
And
this
some
over
people are
here, you
like,
got a reverse mortgage, you've got that pool of money, and then you've got your investments over here,
yeah.
and you can go back and forth and use that strategically to fund your retirement.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, some people will say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay interest on my own money that I'm taking out. And I'm like, yeah, but the interest might be 5.75%. And you're going to get docked from taking it from your investments. If you're taking 10 grand a month, you're in a really high tax bracket, right? So you're going to actually possibly pay yet less on the reverse, and it might compound, because it's negative amortizing, but still in the long run, yeah, we'll have to share the sequence of returns sometime and do a whole thing just on that. Because yeah, I
Right,
agree. You end up in most cases with more money in the long run.
right.
So when does it make sense for somebody to use that home equity instead of drawing down the investments? I think we've kind of already hit on that multiple times.
Right.
So, but I guess this is a bigger question. When do you see situations where using that home equity earlier on can actually protect retirement assets? Even more so, obviously, we know when it's drawing down, but do you also see it protecting those assets? Let's say this is where I can almost answer the question, and you tell me if you're agreeing with it. I see the reverse, and using that home equity, protecting their assets. Let's say somebody is sick and they're almost needing to do like that spend down of all their assets. Well, if they have that reverse mortgage in place, right, and they have this big fat line of credit on there, and they're racking up all these medical bills and they're doing their spend down of some of those assets, Medicaid, Medicare, they can come in and put a lien against the house. But if they actually use the reverse mortgage and start pulling some of those funds out and protecting, right? They're protecting that home equity for their family. They can start giving away that home equity ahead of time.
Hmm.
That's one way I see. Is there some other way that you would see that it would actually protect some of the retirement cash besides, obviously, like you're saying, the sequence of returns?
Well, so you can preserve your investments for like later life, so healthcare again,
Mm-hmm.
for long-term care support, for flexibility, maybe using the home equity earlier can protect investment risk for, the higher risk years when you're older. Um,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm just trying to think what else. Really, you kind of touched upon it because um, I'm trying to think. Also, I think we talked about this before. You could use your home equity. I've seen somebody use home equity strictly just to buy a long-term care policy.
Hmm.
So they did
Yeah.
the reverse to fund the long-term care because they knew they would probably have to go into a facility or have long-term care expenses. So that's one way you could do it too. So they had enough to investments. They didn't care about spending down the investments. They used the equity in their home to purchase a really nice long-term care
Long-term
policy
care
to
policy.
help them get into assisted living, which can be a huge expense.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Right. And it's not, always less expensive for sure to age in place at home. Most
Hmm.
people want to age in place at home. Sometimes you just can't. Sometimes that's not the best option. Um, so, what is one retirement myth that you wish would just go away? It's kind of a fun question.
Um, let's see. Lots of myths. Let's see. Um, once that they retire, that their expenses are going to drop.
Oh, that
Lots of
that's probably a
times,
good one, right? Yeah.
yeah, really, lots of times their expenses stay the same or they get higher because they travel more. They they go and do hobbies. They help their kids. They send money to their grandkids. Um, they they do things that they didn't do when they were working. So,
That costs a lot of money. Yeah,
right.
that's true.
So those types of things is it leads to danger of underestimating how much income that they're going to need in retirement and then taking money out of their portfolios too early in life. So you hear about those people that have 401ks from previous jobs and then they instead of rolling it and
Hmm.
continuing to make money, oh, I'm just going to use that and I'm going to start a business or oh, I'm just going to use that and I'm going to um, pay off some bills or something like that. So it's those types of things that lead to, myths that, oh, I'll just rebuild my 401k later on in life. No,
Yeah, yeah. Don't
that's
do that. Don't do that.
don't do that. And then, um, I mean, that's really it. It's if I use it early, I can rebuild it and start over. No,
Hmm.
you, your biggest thing against you is time. So if you don't start early, then you're going to have to put more money in later to make up for the time that you lost.
Right. Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I can think of one thing that a lot of people don't think that's going to increase. They don't realize that just your auto policy insurance, right? Auto insurance increases when you're older. And I've heard that from many, many different agents.
Hmm.
When we start hitting, sadly, like our mid to late 60s, that the insurance starts going up again, like when you were 18, because they figure a lot of people are not seeing as well. Your reactions slow down as you age, and older people do tend to get in more accidents. You would think it would be more like late 70s or 80s you would see that, but they say it's quite a bit lower. I'm like, wow, okay, so yeah, we better prepare for that. They're cost enough already. Um, so here's, I think, one good last question. How long should retirees realistically plan to have their money last? And obviously, everybody's life expectancy is different, right?
Well, realistically, they should expect it to last. They should plan to expect it to last anywhere from 25 to 30 years because people want to retire at 65 to 70 years of age. Most people get tired of working. That's what I hear most of the time. They're tired at age 65, 70. They want to retire. But life expectancy tables right now are 93 for men and it's 95 for women. So if you retire at 70, realistically, you need to plan for 25 to 30 years. I mean, my dad's 90.
Yeah,
So he could live another 5 years. You hear about those women and men now living into their hundreds. So if their financial advisor didn't do a good thing, they may not be having very much money to live off, and they're not in very good assisted living facilities because they
Right?
didn't plan, right?
Yeah.
So realistically, they need to think ahead. Like I said, it's not the number. They need to be thinking about how long is it going to last.
How long is
So
that cash flow going to last? Yeah.
right, because
Yeah.
everybody's spending habits are different. So
Right.
500,000 for me might work, where 1 million for my next door neighbor may not work because his spending habits are different and he may need 2 million
hmm
because his timeline, his spending, whatever, his lifestyle is completely different than mine. So they have to think about how long, not how
Right.
much.
Right, which makes sense. And again, and a lot of that comes even back to the sequence of returns if they have money in the markets, right? And I've had
Mhm.
some planners say, "Well, I move my clients' money over. They're not really, in the markets when they retire." But a lot of people are retiring younger, right? And if they do, they probably still need it to be in the market and be a little aggressive
They
because they
do.
they are going to live a long time and they've got to make that money up. So those sequence of return are just detrimental. And that's where I've put up screens, explanations before for people. When they actually see the numbers, their jaw drops. I'm like, yeah, I mean, these are real numbers back from early 2000. And if you drew out, you retired at 62 in 3 years, half of your $1 million was gone.
Hmm.
But if you delayed it, like you were saying, that's one solution. Or you get that reverse mortgage and pull it out 3 times in the beginning, leave all of your money, and then don't touch the reverse, right, until the market drops again. And so it's interesting information. Well, I think that's a good place to stop and give some people some food for thought. And I think we should wrap around and do a couple of series on just some of these key points that we talked about and dive a little bit deeper to help people understand more.
Right.
And
And
I,
what I
like
always,
you, have that passion for women because a lot of them also, we get left alone, right? And then what do we
right.
do? So yeah, planning ahead is important.
Yeah. And what I always tell them, what I always end my financial planning appointments with is there's only three things that you have control over as an investor. You either can work longer, spend less, or save more. That's the only three things that you have control over. So that's the three things that you have to have in your mind.
Great. Well, we will leave it with that. And thank you so much for your time. And hopefully everybody learned a little something new today. Thanks so
Thanks.
much.